Good evening, everyone. Welcome you all to Oncology Classroom evening session. You all know that this month we have been discussing different interesting topics from pediatric malignancies. We have discussed a couple of very interesting cancers, different aspects from radiation, chemotherapy, surgery. And as you all know that all treatments are associated with some kind of complications, toxicities. So it's equally important to know the treatment complications and how to manage and overcome them. So to discuss this interesting topic, Dr. Neelam Singh, who is our resident in the Department of Radiation Oncology at Indraprastha Apollo Hospital, she will be discussing on treatment complications in pediatric oncology. And I hope this becomes really useful to all of you. Thank you for your attention. Done? Yeah. Start, please.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Am I audible, sir? Am I audible? So good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Neelam. I'm a DNB resident at Indraprastha Apollo Hospital, New Delhi. I would like to thank Dr. Dodul sir for giving me this opportunity. So we've had really amazing sessions in the past on the hippocampal sparing, then on rhabdomyosarcoma, Ewing sarcoma, ependymoma. So what we have got to know is the main modality of treatment that we generally see in all these tumors are surgery, radiotherapy, or chemotherapy. So when we use these treatment modalities, it is obviously associated with some sort of a complications. So today we are going to have a discussion on treatment complications in childhood cancer. So as per the SEER data that was held in 1975 to 1995 that showed the distribution of childhood cancers as per the US statistics, and it showed that 32% of the childhood cancers comprised of leukemias, around 20% cancers were CNS tumors, around percent were lymphomas, and 6% kidney tumors. There was 8% of tumors that was neuroblastoma. There were 5% bone tumors, 7% sarcomas, and 11% constituted other cancers. So as we see here, as we moved from 1950s towards 2014, and we see how there has been improvement in the cancer survival from 10 to 20% in 1950s to more than 80% in 2014. Thereby, childhood cancer survivors are living longer and they have more late effects that manifest. So in this slide, we see the impact of new chemotherapy in acute lymphocytic leukemia. So in this study that was published by NEGM in 1995, and we see how there is increase in the of event-free survival as we go from 1950s towards 1980s. So what should be our current approach to childhood cancers? So obviously to maximize the cure and to minimize the toxicities as much as we can. So what are the issues in pediatric radiation therapy delivery? Children have a lower tolerance to radiation due to growing tissues, and therefore they're likely to suffer more damage. Relatively large target volumes compared to the overall body volume. Immobilization of young children is a major issue. Children below 4 to 5 years of age may require anesthesia. Presence of additional dose limiting normal tissues compared to adult patients such as growing bones, pituitary, thyroid, lungs, etc. There's risk of producing a radiation induced second malignancy, and modern conformal like intensity modulated therapy or VMAT may result in a large volume of the treated region receiving unequal small doses of radiation and may result in asymmetric organ growth that resulting in bad cosmesis, late cardiac damage, hormonal imbalance, growth retardation, difficulty in neurocognition, psychological, sexual, and fertility issues. So, what are the good practices that we can do in pediatric radiation delivery? Immobilization, cast preparation, and simulation in a child-friendly environment with distraction aids, treated daily on the same machine so that he or she is familiar with the treating personnel. This two-way communication device during simulation and treatment delivery so that the child does not feel isolated, and a daily setup verification of portals prior to delivery. Target volume definitions using defining protocols and using imaging of diagnostic CT, MRI, and PET images. Dose prescriptions should be individualized. Delivering dose with fewer known coplanar beams could be better. Growth and development to be continuously monitored. Sedation required to maintain immobilization is a better idea to use short-acting agents such as propofol. So in this slide, we see the critical RT doses to the particular structures in children and in adults. So as we see, the limiting dose of radiation in children to brain is around 18 gray. For bones is 10 gray, pituitary 20 gray. The ovary or testis, the limiting dose of radiation is 10 gray. Lung mean lethal dose is more than 9 gray, lens more than 12 to 15 gray, and thyroid below 20 gray up to 14 years of age. And here, as we see in breast cancer, the induction at 40 gray, and there's increase in the relative risk by 20%. So in this slide, we see various things. We see the range of tolerance doses cells, the complication endpoints, and the dose range. So here we see that the lymphoid and lymphocytes have a dose range of around 2 to 10 gray, like lens has a dose gray of 6 to 12 gray, liver with a dose range of 35 to 40 gray, heart with a dose range of 40 to 45 gray, and here we see all the complication endpoints when we exceed the tolerance dose. And here we see structures such as spinal cord with a tolerance with a dose range of 54 to 70 gray, 50 to 60 gray, and mature bones with a dose range of 65 to 70. So what are the acute side effects associated with radiation therapy? So I have divided this into three categories: acute side effects associated with surgery, side effects associated with radiotherapy, and chemotherapy. So what are the acute side effects associated with surgery? So there can be air embolism, hemorrhage, wound dehiscence, CSF leak, brainstem dysfunction, infection, mutism. They can be impaired respiratory function, diplopia, facial palsy. They can be vocal cord paralysis, cranial neuropathies. So in radiation, they can acute side effects like myelosuppression, emesis, diarrhea. They can be fatigue, headache, erythema, dermatitis, esophagitis. They can be endocrine dysfunction. They can be cognitive dysfunction. They can be radiation necrosis, or they can be growth impairment. And with chemotherapy, likewise, there can be myelosuppression. There can be ototoxicity, nephrotoxicity, and neurotoxicity. So today, mainly we are going to deal with the late effects of treatment. So this is a little busy slide here as we see the radiation field and the radiation associated organ toxicity. So here as you see in radiation field, radiation, or there is, we give radiation to head and neck, if there is a total body irradiation, and the toxicities associated are they can be neurocognitive impairment, there can be vasculopathies, there can be hearing impairment, there can be vision impairment, there can be growth hormone deficiencies. Likewise, if we are irradiating the lung or giving a mantle field in Hodgkin's, or we are giving a mediastinal radiation, so there can be secondary cancers such as thyroid, breast, upper GI, lung. There can be esophageal strictures, there can be cardiomyopathy, there can be lung fibrosis. Likewise, here we see that there are various radiation fields when we cover, and associated toxicities that we can see. Whereas on the other side, we see the various chemotherapeutic agents and the associated toxicities with the particular drug. So as here you can see with intrathecal methotrexate or high dose methotrexate, there can be neurocognitive impairment. With corticosteroids or cisplatin, carboplatin, there can be cataract, hearing impairment. Likewise, so I've mentioned all the chemotherapeutic agents and the associated toxicities. So as you can see here with vincristine, there is risk of peripheral neuropathy. With alkylating agents, there can be hypogonadism, infertility. So what are the determinants of late effects? So there are tumor related factors. So what are the tumor related factors? So it depends on the type of cancer, it depends on the site of cancer, the stage of tumor, genetic and familial conditions. So what are the treatment related factors? The treatment related factors such as type of surgery, chemotherapy, type, dose and schedule, type of radiation, part of body that has been treated, and a dose that has been given, or if the child had received stem cell transplant, or if there is use of 2 or more types of treatment at the same time, or if there is a chronic graft versus host disease. The patient related factors such as gender, baseline health, child's age at diagnosis, the length of time since diagnosis and treatment, the immune status. So these all are the patient related factors. Enumerates the late complications of childhood cancer therapy. Growth and development, which includes linear growth, intellectual function, sexual maturation, reproduction, that includes fertility, health of offspring, vital organ function of cardiac, pulmonary, renal, gastrointestinal, and second, neoplasms, which can be benign or malignant, and psychosocial adjustment. So about growth and development, dose and age of radiation affect ultimate height attained. Steep dose effect relationship for bone growth effects between about 15 and 30 gray. Early onset of puberty is common after cranial radiation, further reducing ultimate height, and is dependent inversely with age as well as body mass index. Age at the time of treatment, total dose of radiation, fraction size, and volume treated are all significant predictors of ultimate height as well as effect on the hypothalamic pituitary axis. Radiation therapy for childhood cancers interferes with the physical growth, neurocognitive growth, musculoskeletal growth, and ultimately the pubertal development. The effect is direct with resultant growth impairment that causes cosmetic defects. Asymmetric irradiation fields can cause differential growth of the irradiated part, leading to anatomical or functional defects such as scoliosis. There can be organ hypoplasia which may not be immediately apparent, but it might be visible during the child's growth spurt. Breast asymmetry occurs after unilateral chest radiotherapy prior to maturity. It has been seen that at doses beyond 20 gray, there is lack of breast development, while hypoplasia occurs after exposure to doses of 10 to 20 gray. Adipose tissue is very sensitive to irradiation, and fat distribution may reflect irradiation fields and may cause unequal growth. So talking about intellectual function, there can be difficulties in reading, language, and arithmetic may arise from impairment of attention capabilities, memory, and visual perceptual motor skills. Child receiving higher doses, around more than 36 gray for the treatment of brain tumors, they have significant deficit, which if deferred until after age 2, cognitive defects may not be as profound. Sparing of the hippocampus by limiting dose of radiation to at least 40 to 50% of the organ to less than 7.3 gray and ensuring a limitation of the Dmax to less than 12 to 15 gray is associated with memory and sensory processing sparing. So what are the factors influencing the neurocognitive outcomes? So age at diagnosis, tumor factors such as type, grade, location, duration, associated hydrocephalus or seizures, tumor status, whether it is stable, progressive, recurrent, other therapies, and associated comorbidities. So what are the intellectual functions in CNS survivors? And it is worse in lower socioeconomic status, in patients who have received cranial radiotherapy, younger age of diagnosis, and the tumors have supratentorial location. So what are the neurocognitive late effects? So neurocognitive late effects, it can be radiation induced, it can be chemotherapy induced, and it can be associated with surgical resection. So radiation induced can be dose related or it can be age related. Chemotherapy induced can be due to methotrexate or intrathecal therapy, and surgical resection such as spinal cord surgery or a CSF shunting or a tumor resection. So radiation-related factors influencing the neurocognitive outcomes are dose, such as the total tumor dose, the dose to the critical structures, whether it's a hypofractionation or a hypofractionation that we have treated, whether it's a whole brain or a craniospinal irradiation or a partial brain treatment, techniques that we have used, whether it's a conformal, margins that given, accuracy of execution, the energy that we've used, photon versus particle beam, and obviously the planning, the dose constant models to minimize the cognitive impairment. So how can we prevent all this cognitive dysfunction? It can be done by eliminating or reducing the cranial radiation, substituting chemotherapy with CNS penetration, avoiding parenteral methotrexate after radiation by monitoring the educational performance, and by providing an early intervention. So what are the radiation-based strategies to minimize the cognitive decline? We can avoid radiation whenever we can, like in young patients, if the patient have a favorable histology, or if there's a low burden of disease, or there's equally effective alternative treatments are available. How can we minimize treatment volumes? By giving SRS in oligomets or tumor bed rather than posterior foci in medulloblastoma. How can we use RT doses by obviously reduce dose craniospinal irradiation, or we can give a whole brain RT in PCNSL. And what are the modern technologies we can use, like accurate target volume delineation using multimodal imaging, minimal PTV margins, by a high confirmation IMRT or a particle beam treatment, or radiation delivery under image or stereotactic guidance. And obviously, last but not the least, conformal avoidance to hippocampus, putamen, temporal lobes, frontal lobes. So these are the certain strategies by which we can minimize the cognitive decline. So I have taken this slide from Tanveer Sahita's PPT that he has recently put on various groups. I would thank him for this slide. So this was a study by Jalali et al. Published in 2010, showing the factors influencing neurocognitive outcomes in young patients with benign and low-grade brain tumors treated with stereotactic conformal radiotherapy. So it took patients with 5 to 25 years, low-grade or benign with residual or progressive brain tumors, and they were treated with stereotactic conformal radiotherapy with dose of 54 gray in 30 fractions. And The assessment was done by age-appropriate neuropsychological assessment and Wechsler intelligence score chart, and it concluded that younger age, less than 15 years, and RT doses to left temporal lobe, they are predictors of neurocognitive decline. So temporal lobes are important. There no IQ decline if the dose to left temporal lobe is less than 13% volume, receiving more than 40 gray, and age than 13 years. So this is one more study that was published in JAMA Oncology, showing the efficacy of stereotactic conformal radiotherapy versus conventional radiotherapy on benign and low grade brain tumors. And it showed this level 1 incidence for high precision modern radiotherapy. Smaller volume of irradiated normal tissue has significantly superior clinical outcomes. So this is another study that shows which is the most optimal technique to spare hippocampus. And this was a study in which 10 patients with benign or low-grade brain tumor were replanned with helical tomotherapy, IMRT, and forward planning stereotactic conformal radiotherapy. So 99% of the PTV encompassed by 95% of the prescribed dose. The dose was 54 grain. The assessment of target coverage, homogeneity index, and maximum and minimum dose was done. The hippocampal dose was assessed with mean, maximum, minimum, and median. And it showed that tomotherapy and LINAC-based IMRT gives significantly better PTV coverage, and tomotherapy as compared to stereotactic conformal radiotherapy and IMRT plans trend towards significant sparing of the contralateral hippocampus in eccentrically located tumors. Now, talking a bit about sexual maturation, Sertoli cells are more sensitive than Leydig cells to radiation, and young boys without Leydig cell damage can have normal masculinization even in the face of azoospermia. Such sterile males can usually be assured of potency and normal libido. Cranial radiation to girls can also result in gonadal insufficiency by impairment in luteinizing hormone or follicular stimulating hormone production and secretion. These children may experience both pubertal delay and amenorrhea. Hormone therapy may be needed to initiate and maintain feminization. So males and females are different. Fertility and hormone production are not synchronous in males, unlike females. Radiation and alkylating agents, agent chemotherapy such as cyclophosphamide, ifosfamide, cisplatin are responsible, and doses are critical. Ovarian function after radiotherapy stops causing infertility, which may be irreversible. The testis is more sensitive with very low doses, that is around 2 to 3 gray of radiotherapy, causing azoospermia in all males, but late recovery after several years can happen. So how can we prevent this gonadal toxicities? By eliminating or reducing the radiation to the gonads, designs gender-specific protocols for males, avoid or reduce total dose of alkylating agents. Oophoropexy is commonly performed to prevent infertility. Ovaries displaced from the radiation field. Hyperprolactinemia is caused by hypothalamic pituitary axis irradiation that may impair fertility, growth, and libido, treated with bromocriptine and other dopamine agonists. So now talking about the cardiac late effects. So there are certain factors responsible for cardiac toxicity, such as anthracyclines, and that further depends on gender, age, dose that was given, the latency, the radiation dose, that is more than 25 to 30 gray, the mean left ventricular dose. If it is more than equal to 70 gray, it reduces the left ventricular ejection fraction, and a dose of more than equal to 37 gray to the mean central cardiac dose also reduces the left ventricular ejection fraction. What are the other cardiac late effects that we can see, such as cardiomyopathy, ventricular dysfunction, pericarditis, rhythm abnormalities, pericardial damage, and coronary artery disease? So here, as we see in this, that how with increasing dose there is increased risk of, there is increased cumulative incidence of, in this graph, as you see, there's increased cumulative incidence of congestive heart failure with increase in the dose of radiation. There's increase in this, you can see that with increase in the dose of radiation, how there's increased cumulative incidence of myocardial incidence, thereby concluding that with increase in the dose of radiation, there is increase in the risk of cardiac late effects. How can we prevent this cardiac toxicity? By limiting the total dose of anthracyclines, by infusing the anthracyclines slowly, evaluating cardiac function during therapy, avoiding concomitant radiotherapy, cardioprotectant. Artery-induced cardiac sequelae can be decreased by lowering the total radiation dose, limiting radiation dose in the lower mediastinum, blocking the heart avoidance of interiorly weighed bottles, deep inspiratory breath hold technique by using particle beam therapy, and reduction of tumor dose to less than 40 gray and reduction of daily fraction dose to less than 200 centigrade. So what are the late toxicity of thoracic radiotherapies? So they can be growth abnormalities, bone and soft tissue hypoplasia in prepubertal children. They can be thyroid sequelae such as hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, benign and malignant thyroid nodules. 17% of children treated with RT dose less than 26 gray had thyroid abnormalities compared to 78% with more than 26 gray. So this is the study. Hello. So this is a study that shows the late effects following treatment of Hodgkin's lymphoma during childhood and adolescence, results of Hodgkin lymphoma late effects. So it showed that survival rates have been excellent in patients treated for Hodgkin's lymphoma during childhood and adolescence. However, unfortunately, severe treatment late effects have been observed. Radiation was the most important risk factor for thyroid diseases, cardiac late effects, and subsequent malignant neoplasms, especially thyroid and breast cancer. So a special screening program was initiated for women with chest radiation since they had a high risk of breast cancer already at a younger age. So what are the lung and the thyroid toxicity? Pulmonary fibrosis is the of radiation-induced lung damage. Diffusion capacity, that is percentage DLCO and FEV1 FVC, can deteriorate in asymptomatic patients. Damage to thyroid is common after lower neck or upper mediastinum RT. Initial elevation of TSH with normal T3 and T4, which may maintain euthyroid clinical state for some time. Treatment with thyroid hormone is recommended. Other effects include like benign nodules, there can be Graves' disease, there can be thyroid cancer, and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Now talking about the endocrine issues. So what are the endocrine issues that we see? So there can be growth hormone deficiency, there can be adrenocorticotropic hormone deficiency, there can be thyrotropin releasing hormone deficiency, there can be precocious puberty, and especially in girls, there can be male gonadotropin deficiency, there can be female gonadotropin deficiency, hyperprolactinemia, and there can be metabolic syndrome. So what are the thyroid late effects? So thyroid late effects can be overt hypothyroidism. So what is overt hypothyroidism? So it is when there is an elevated TSH but a decreased T4. And how can we manage these late effects? By thyroxine replacement, anticipatory guidance regarding symptoms of hyper and hypothyroidism, compensated hypothyroidism. It is also same as overt hypothyroidism. So we can give thyroxine to suppress the gland activities. They can be thyroid nodules. We can manage by doing a thyroid scan or a biopsy or resection, and hyperthyroidism by using of a propyl thiouracil or a propanolol or a iodine 131 thyroidectomy. So how can we prevent this endocrine toxicities? So we can give growth hormone therapy or delay puberty with GnRH toxicity, hydrocortisone hormone replacement with thyroxine, GnRH agonist, testosterone replacement, and hormone replacement. So what are the GI and liver toxicities? So fibrosis and adhesions are known to occur after radiotherapy to the bowel. Manifestations include dysphagia, vomiting, abdominal pain. There can be diarrhea, bleeding, and anorexia. There's intolerance to fat, milk, gluten, and fiber-containing food that occur in abdominally irradiated children, and it can cause growth and weight deficit. So beyond tolerated limits, both radiation and chemotherapy to liver can cause fibrosis and occlusion of the central veins of the hepatic lobules. Symptoms of less severe radiation hepatitis include hepatomegaly, ascites, jaundice, and abdominal pain. Talking a bit about kidney and bladder toxicities, the entire kidney in children appears to tolerate up to 15 gray in 1.8 gray daily fractions. The total kidney V20 and V30 should be less than 10% respectively. Tubular damage and hypertension due to renal artery stenosis, most common after radiation therapy with doses above 20 gray. Glomerular injury has been seen to recover over time, but tubular injury persists. Radiation also induces bladder fibrosis, diminishing capacity and decreasing contractibility. The severity of the damage caused is proportion to the dose and volume of bladder irradiated. So the effect on orbital irradiation. So on orbital bone, we can see hourglass appearance. It is evident by early adolescence when orbital growth is mostly complete. Bone changes are seen after higher doses of around more than 23 gray, and soft tissue changes can be seen with doses more than 6 gray. There can be dry eye in 5 to 25% of cases receiving a dose of 30 to 40 gray. There can be cataract in healthy eyes, develop 1 to 3 years after irradiation, and there can be retinopathy risk that increases at doses above 50 gray. What are the psychosocial late effects? Fear of recurrence and death, adjustment to physiological late effects, sexual intimacy issues. There can be changes in social support, employment discrimination, financial issues, quality of life issues. So these are a few psychosocial late effects. So what are the methods of eliminating or limiting these late effects? By omitting or delaying radiotherapy until the child is older, by decreasing the radiotherapy doses and volumes, by incorporating chemotherapy in the treatment regimen, alteration of radiotherapy fractionation, using of novel techniques to spare or minimize radiation dose to the surrounding normal tissues, and elimination of radiotherapy in favorable subsets of patients. So here in this slide, see there are a few common chemotherapy agents, and it's the associated late effects that we can see with this chemotherapy agents and how we can monitor them. So here depending on system wise, so like with intrathecal chemotherapy with high dose methotrexate, there can be cognitive dysfunction, there can be leukoencephalopathy. With cytarabine, as we see, there can be cerebellar dysfunction. So likewise with the various drugs like bleomycin, which can be associated with pulmonary fibrosis, ifosfamide with ovarian failure. So these are the various chemotherapy agents and the potential side effects that we can see with this particular agent. So what are the most common second malignancies? So here we see the relationship between the first malignancy and the second malignancy that can occur. So here we see that both retinoblastoma, like other brain tumors, Ewing sarcoma, soft tissue sarcoma, acute lymphocytic leukemia. So they have a risk for increased risk for second malignancy, such as bone tumors. So soft tissue sarcoma, there can be soft tissue sarcoma as secondary malignancy in patients with retinoblastoma, or if there's a soft tissue sarcoma or a Hodgkin's disease, a Wilms tumor. Likewise, in breast cancer, they can be, if there is a Hodgkin's disease or a bone tumor or a soft tissue sarcoma, or if there's a Wilms tumor, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So patients with these malignancies, they have a higher risk of developing breast cancer as a secondary malignancy. So here, as you can see, thyroid cancers, they're associated with acute lymphocytic leukemia, soft tissue sarcoma, and likewise for brain tumors and other carcinomas. So talking a bit about second malignancies, so overall rate 3.5% at 25 years. Bone and soft tissue sarcomas, the most common secondary malignancies. Chemo used with RT increases the risk. The average latency period is 15 years. Solid tumors, 81% of all secondary malignancies. Relative risk after Hodgkin's disease radiation is 12% at 25 years. And the relative risk after brain radiotherapy is 3% at 20 years. Risk dose linear relation increases with time period. The survivors of childhood cancer 3 to 6 fold higher risk of secondary malignancies than the general population. So what is the mechanism of occurrence? So radiation induced cancer is thought to arise from a radiation-induced cancer is thought to arise in regions distant from the target volume, which would have received low doses. Cell sterilization hypothesis given by Louis Gray in 1964. The present research shows that the risk increases proportionate to the dose received at the site of the second malignancy. This theory explained by accelerated repopulation during and after radiation therapy, which compensates for cell losses. So what are the factors predisposing to second neoplasms? The treatment modalities such as radiation therapy, chemotherapy, including alkylating agents, genetic conditions such as genetic retinoblastoma, neurofibromatosis, or Life-Romney syndrome. So what is the effect of radiotherapy technique? So traditionally, IMRT, VMAT was associated with high risk, but Hall extrapolated increase in incidence from 1% to 1.75% by IMRT due to multiple beams spreading large areas with lower doses. Thereby, there's an increased integral dose. And this theory was disproven by many researchers. IMRT not shown to cause increased integral or peripheral dose due to large beams. Secondary malignancies occur mainly in high dose area with dose risk linear relation. So radiation therapy and secondary neoplasms associated with bone and soft tissue sarcoma. So doses of more than 40 gray in adolescents, mean doses of risk of sarcomatus, secondary malignancy is 25 to 28 gray, while it is between 15 to 20 gray for other secondary malignancies. Most commonly seen in patients treated with retinoblastoma, Ewing sarcoma, and Hodgkin's lymphoma. The cumulative risk at 3 years is 20% for Ewing sarcoma and 5 to 7% for other tumors. CNS secondary malignancies, they comprise of 11 to 25% of all secondary malignancies. The cumulative incidence is 2 to 3% at 20 years. It is noted in children having prophylactic cranial irradiation for leukemias, cranial RT of 50 gray or more, higher cumulative incidence of secondary malignancy within the CNS at 7.1% at 25 years, and risk has a linear relation with dose and volume parameters. Carcinomas of the breast, it is most common after irradiation for Hodgkin's lymphoma. A dose of more than 20 gray, girls entering or just beyond puberty are most at risk, and most secondary malignancies, they occur within the field or near the field edge. Thyroid secondary malignancies, most in leukemia or Hodgkin's disease survivors, young children at highest risk, and there a dose effect is seen. So in this graph, as you see, there's a, it is between how with increased age there's increased relative risk for thyroid cancers. So it shows that with increasing in age and increasing in the radiation dose, there is increased relative risk for thyroid cancers as secondary malignancy. So breast cancer after thoracic radiation in childhood. So there were studies by Midline, MBASE, the Cochrane CI NAHL search that was held between 1966 to 2008, and it showed that the cumulative incidence within 40 to 45 years is 13 to 20%, with standardized incidence ratio of 13.3 to 55.5, and the incidence increased linearly with RT dose, with there were approximately 13% were bilateral, mostly metachronous, and benefits of target surveillance screening is required. So carcinomas, there's elevated risk of renal cell carcinoma amongst patients with neuroblastoma, GI carcinomas among patients with Wilms tumor and Hodgkin's lymphoma, and head and neck carcinomas among patients with leukemia, neuroblastoma, and soft tissue sarcoma. Leukemias, it is one of the first reported secondary malignancies frequently after Hodgkin's lymphoma, followed by non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Wilms tumor, and neuroblastoma with an overall of about 7. Leukemias in about 3 to 6 years after irradiation compared to beyond 10 years for most secondary solid tumors. The dose risk effect plateaus after 16 gray. So there's also an increased risk of late recurrence, as we see. This was a report by Childhood Cancer Survivors Study, and it showed that there is a around 4.4% increased risk of late recurrence at 10 years, 5.6% at 15 years, and 6.2% at 20 years. So what is a survivor intent of intervention to reduce the late effects? It's by health education, re-exercise, diet, sun, smoking cessation, reproductive counseling, psychosocial support, education regarding previous disease history, and discussion of risk associated with treatment. So provider education to reduce late effects, knowledge of late effects of cancer therapy, improve ability to recognize and treat subclinical late effects, detect second cancers early by screening of high-risk patients for RT-associated cancers, counseling of survivors with genetic predisposition. So presently, it is suggested that childhood cancer survivors should be encouraged to prevent exposure to known carcinogens such as tobacco, limited exposure to alcohol, and as I said, sun protection, reduced fat intake, maximal intake of fruit and vegetables. So what are the surveillance techniques for detecting cancers in the general population, like breast self-examination, mammography, testicular examination, examination of stools for blood, evaluation of the rectum and colon should be performed regularly. How to limit the late effects? By delaying or omitting radiotherapy till the child is older, decreasing the radiotherapy doses if possible, increasing the volume of radiotherapy bottles, by incorporating chemotherapy, by alteration of radiotherapy fractionation, and by using of novel techniques. So in this slide, we see that the specific late effects that we see with the radiation, with the therapy that we give, and the screening tests that should be performed. Like we see in muscular cancers with musculoskeletal cancers, and if the therapy given is radiotherapy, and the screening test that we should do is that we should do a physical examination, we should give a scoliosis examination, same like if the patient in a breast cancer patient, if the patient has received mediastinal RT, the screening tests such as breast examination and mammography should be starting by 25 to 30 years of age. So like in patients who have received a hypothalamic pituitary RT, the patient's growth curve should be seen. There should be growth hormone stimulation tests should be done, like TSH, free T4, T3 should be done, luteinizing hormone and other hormonal function tests should be done. So likewise in therapies, like if a patient has received radiation or bleomycin, any with pulmonary cancer, so a baseline PFT should be done. So likewise with the particular like the treatment that the patient has received, so these are the certain screening tests that should be done, and that will obviously help in delaying the toxicities. So this slide, we see that this is a 16-year-old girl, a case of pinealoblastoma post-op, in which in the first, here we see that we have contoured the GTV. So this is the high-risk CTV, CTV 55.8, and this is the 46. This is the craniospinal CTV. So here, as we see that how craniospine, and the child was treated with proton therapy. So as here you can see in this dose color wash, that there is no exit dose beyond Bragg peak, and thereby avoiding the dose to the structures that is anterior to the spine. So here you can see how there is no dose and there's no dose that we can see to the structures that is anterior to the spine. And here that we see the dose coverage in the 55 gray, that is the high risk CTV. So in this slide, you see that here we see the proton, the dose coverage with the proton beam therapy, whereas here we see the dose coverage with the conventional photon RT. And as I said here, as we see that with the proton beam therapy, there is no exit dose beyond Bragg peak, and thereby there is avoidance. There is avoiding the doses to the anterior structure that is anterior to the spine, whereas in conventional photon RT, there is exit from the spinal field, delivering low to intermediate dose to structures that is anterior to the spine. So as we see, so what is the net gain that we get with the proton beam therapy? So here, as we see how beautifully we have spared all the anterior mediastinal structures, and here as we see, there's still a low to intermediate dose that is going to the structures that is anterior to the spine. So what should be an ideal follow-up program? It should be coordinated, comprehensive care, multidisciplinary, culturally and socially appropriate, and anticipatory guidance based on therapy and other risk factors, and transition to adult healthcare system. So radiotherapy and chemotherapy can result in adverse long-term physiologic sequel for survivors of childhood cancer. These treatment modalities have resulted in a markedly increased survival rate for almost all pediatric malignancies. Therefore, it is essential to balance the benefits against risk. Both length of survival and the impact of physiologic late effects on the quality of that survival must be considered in therapy selection. Thank you.